We Live in Time is directed by John Crowley, written by Nick Payne, and stars Andrew Garfield, Florence Pugh, and Grace Delaney. And We Live in Time follows Almut, an up-and-coming chef, played by Florence Pugh, and Tobias, a recent divorcee, played by Andrew Garfield, as they find their lives forever changed when a chance encounter brings them together in a decade-spanning, deeply moving romance. Now, going into this, I was excited, but, a little bit of a tempered excitement. Obviously, A24 producing is a decent enough sign, and Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh are two of the best actors we have working right now. But it was a romance story, and it looked a little generic, and I wasn't totally sure about it, but after seeing it, this movie does exactly what it needs to be. It's so solid and so sturdy, and just really excels at what it wants to be. The best place to start with it is the story structure. The title is obviously We Live in Time, and due to various elements of the narrative, time is, the whole story. It's paramount to the story. And this movie is told in a nonlinear fashion, which I think was a great choice. It allows the characters to have a lot of space in the present day and to build the present day drama. They jump around for context, and you're curious, how does this reflect on the current day? How will the current day reflect on this next flashback? And I really liked that because I think the movie does this very, very confidently. I admit I was a little silly. I underestimated this movie a bit because it is a romance movie. And I thought, it's non-linear. Like, the first time they cut back, they'll give us a subtitle that says 4 years earlier. And then when they cut back forward, it'll say, 6 months later, whatever it might be. But they never do that. They just cut right back and they say, all right, we're going to give you a couple signifiers that this is a different time, but you'll figure it out. And I think that's a big element of why this movie works, is John Crowley trusts the audience to, figure this out, figure out where we are in the narrative at a given point and how these things reflect on each other. And I also have to credit another element of the story structure to John Crowley, and I'm sure Nick Payne plays into this in a big way as well, which is there are a lot of scenes that are set up to be big scenes, quote unquote, and they're ultimately buttoned by small, low-stakes human moments. So one example is a scene where Alma and Tobias are meeting with Alma's doctor regarding her health, which is a big part of this movie, is Alma has ovarian cancer, and that was sort of what I was alluding to earlier about time factoring into the movie. And there's a scene where they're meeting with the doctor, and they don't quite get the news that they want, and you think that the scene might go in the direction of someone having a breakdown, doctor, what can we do about this, blah blah blah. But instead, the doctor, to try and ease the nerves, pulls out a giant tin of chocolates, and then they all have a little moment where they're just eating chocolate and asking each other which chocolate they grabbed out of this tin, and the scene just ends on that. And I really liked that. It was so effective to show, even though this is a movie, it's still a very real thing that humans go through, and they remind you of that by giving you this very grounded human moment, and I really liked that. But Crowley also lets the really big moments play out in full, and I think that's very effective because those are the moments where the emotional impact really needs to land, and they really do. The standout scenes in this area are the movie's final moments, which are absolutely beautiful. Really a very strong ending on the movie, which definitely hit me in my core. And the birthing scene, I don't want to give too much away, but that scene is incredible, and it was just beautiful, and it's, I'm getting a little choked up talking about it. It's definitely one of my favorite scenes of the year. It's so emotional and so funny, and that's a big credit I also want to give to this movie, is it's really funny, but not in a forced way, again, in a very true to life, grounded way. And pretty much all the comedic beats worked for me, and they're not comedic beats that are supposed to make you burst out laughing. They're just supposed to kind of lighten the mood a little bit and give you a little chuckle, and they definitely did that for me. And I think a big part of the reason that those moments worked so well and all the emotional moments worked so well is this movie is truly, truly elevated by the acting from Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, who are absolutely the best part of this movie. You know, on paper, this movie is kind of a simple and maybe a bit slight romantic drama, but Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh come in and they save it from just blending in with the crowd, and they bring it to that next level. And their performances are so good. They have such great chemistry. Putting them together here is almost like a cheat code, and they're kind of opposites in a very nice way. Andrew Garfield is doing this very kind of like deliberate way of speaking, where there are lots of moments where he'll just kind of be quiet for 4 seconds and then say very few words, whereas Florence Pugh is kind of this big personality and she can be a bit brash at times, and they contrast each other very well. And also the two actors are matching each other's level so well. You know, with a two-hander like this, there's kind of a risk of one actor very much outperforming the other actor and it ultimately standing out. But here, these two are just matching each other. They're both working at a very high level and they're both working on the same level. And I think this is just paramount to the movie's success, because it could very easily be a bit one-sided. You know, I think the movie is a bit more about Alma's story, and it does follow her a bit more, and she's the emotional core a bit more, but they don't sideline Andrew Garfield at all. He still is so central to the story and has all his emotions, and because the two performers are so much on the same level, it allows the movie's vibe and the emotions to just hit all the harder. You know, I've heard of this idea of actors competing to quote-unquote win a scene, but I get the impression here that Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield were competing together. They wanted to win the scene together, and as a result, they just totally pop on the screen. They are so good to watch in this movie. Really just great performances that completely elevate the material. And they bring so much to it, keeping the characters just so complex when they could become so one-dimensional. You know, sick wife and sad husband. Those characters could be fit into boxes so easily, but they're so complex. You know, Alma messes up, Tobias messes up. Tobias gets mad, Alma gets mad, just like what I think a situation like this in real life might kind of feel like. You know, I don't want to say that too strongly because this is a movie after all, but I do think this movie really captures what I think it must feel like a little bit to be in love with someone and go through something like that. But yeah, this movie is really solid. If there's anything I could say against it, like I said before, it's just there's nothing it really does to jump to the next level. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, and I don't think anyone here is really trying to do that. I think they're just trying to make a really good romantic drama, and I think they did that. This is a movie that I really enjoyed watching. If you like a good British weepy, a good tearjerker, I'd highly recommend catching this in theaters. It's nice to see with an audience. It's nice to see with someone in your life. It's a good tearjerker. Yeah. We Live in Time, highly recommend it. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye!